Hello children, welcome back to my channel. This is Manish Yadav, your English teacher. Today I am going to explain the chapter Silk Road, where we left studying the previous video. I lay back down and tried again. Same result. I was on the point of disappearing into a land of nod when something called me not to. The narrator, Nick Middleton, tries to lay back again, and the result was same. He could not breathe and sleep properly. He was feeling the same as he tried to lay down. He was on the point of disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. And he could not realize what was going on. And that problem was about to disappear, but again, when he tried to lay down, he felt the same. It must have been those emergencies, electrical impulses again. But this was not the same as on previous occasion. This time, the narrator felt those emergency electrical impulses again. He thought that there is a problem within me, and definitely a system within me is not proper, and it is hanging. So these are electrical impulses and emergencies of electrical short circuits, but this was not the same as on previous occasion. But this time that was not the same as he felt previously. This time he was feeling something different. What he felt this time? He was not gasping for breath. I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. This time he could breathe, as the line has been given. I was not gasping for breath. This time he was breathing properly. Only the problem was he could not allow to go to sleep. He could not sleep only. Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. And this time he sat up once more abruptly, and he was feeling better by doing that. When he sat up, he felt better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. And this time he was breathing freely. He could breathe freely and his chest was feeling fine, better than before. But as soon as I lay down, my sinus filled and my chest was odd. But when he was trying to lay down again, his sinus, nostrils again filled and blocked. His chest was odd. He was feeling the same as he felt previously. He felt heaviness in his chest. What happens next? Let me scroll down the page. Yeah. Sorry. I tried propping myself upright against the wall, but now I could not manage to relax enough to drop off. This time, the narrator tries to take a support on the wall, and he wanted to get relaxed by doing that. However, he could not manage to get relaxed enough to drop off to sleep. He could not manage to sleep by doing that. I could not put my finger on the reason. The narrator was unknown to the reason. What was the reason? That is why he could not sleep. But I was afraid to do sleep. But narrator was afraid to go to sleep. A little voice inside me was saying that if I might never wake up again. A horrible voice was coming from within, that if he slept, he could never wake up again. So I stayed awake all night. So narrator decides to stay awake, throughout the night, because he was afraid of, death. That is why he could not slept. He wanted to wake up all night because a horrible voice was coming within. He was afraid of death. If I sleep, if I lay down, something would happen, with me and I'll die. So he stayed awake all night. Shaitan took me to the Darchain Medical College the following morning. He was, assisted and taken by Shaitan to the Darchain Medical College by the following morning. Next morning, Shaitan took him to the Darchain Medical College. Shaitan, the driver of the car. And who was taken? Nick Middleton, the narrator, who was going to complete his Quora. The medical college at Darchain was new and looked like a monastery from the outside, with a very solid door that led into a large courtyard. The medical college at Darchain was new. It was newly constructed and it was looking like a monastery. Monastery, a place where saints, parsons and priests live. Mutt, जिसको कहते हैं mutt, from the outside, with a very solid door, and the door of that medical college was very firm and strict, strong, and that door was leading into a large courtyard inside the medical college. We found the consulting room, which was dark and cold and occupied by a Tibetan doctor who wore none of the paraphernalia that I had been expecting. When the narrator visited the courtyard, it was a large courtyard, he found a consulting room. There was a room for consultancy. Consultancy room, in which we are consulted, we are recommended. We get advices and suggestions about the doctors, about the faculty, about the facilities of an organization, which was dark. And that consulting room was dark and cold and occupied by a Tibetan doctor. And there was a Tibetan doctor over there who wore none of the paraphernalia. Paraphernalia, the costumes and the dress code, which is often, wore by a doctor: white long coat, stethoscope around doctor's neck, mask on their mouth. So he was not looking like that. He was looking as similar as every Tibetan people that I had been expecting, as I expected. Narrator says that I expected, as I thought about the doctor, he was not like that. No white coat. He was not wearing white coat. He looked like any other Tibetan with a quick pullover and a woolly hat. And he was looking like other Tibetan people with a thick pullover. He was wearing a thick pullover and woolly hat. And the hat, it is in the shape of a hat which is, rising upward. And when I explained my sleepiness symptoms and my sudden aversion to lying down, he shot me a few questions. When the narrator explained and told the doctor about his sleepless symptoms, my sudden aversion to lying down, he told everything what happened with him last night or previous night. He could not lay down easily, he could not sleep easily. His chest was feeling, heaviness or heavy. So everything was told to the doctor by the narrator, and these all were the symptoms of his sleepless moment. He shot me a few questions. Doctor put up a few questions to the narrator so that he would approach to the conclusion what is the problem and reason. That is why the narrator was feeling uneasy. Let you know next. While feeling the veins of my wrist, the doctor took the wrist of narrator and felt the veins, as doctors often do by touching the wrist to know the pulses. They try to know the blood pressure and heartbeat by touching the veins in the wrist. It is cold, he said finally through Satan. Doctor told Satan that I was suffering from cold and everything was going on due to cold and altitude. A cold and the effects of altitude. Next, altitude means height. Height. I'll give you something for it. Doctor says, told narrator to give something. He recommended medicines. I asked him if he thought I would recover enough to be able to do the Kora. Narrator. He asked doctor if he would be able to make Kora by recovering enough, because he has to complete his Kora. How will he complete his Kora if he doesn't feel better, if he is not healthy? So he was worried about that, and he asked to the doctor that would I be able to make my Kora? Oh yes, he said, you'll be fine. Doctor replied, positively with the great affirmation, saying, yes, you'll be fine soon and you'll be able to make Kora. I walked out of the medical college clutching a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of papers. Narrator walked out. He came out of the medical college by collecting his medicines. He collected, clutching a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of paper. Sometimes Ayurveda doctors provide us, screws of papers. They manage medicine and keep on a scrap of a paper and they fold it. पुड़िया जिसको कहते हैं. I had a 5-day course of Tibetan medicine which I started right away. And my doctor recommended me, the doctor of medical college recommended me to take the medicine constantly for 5 days. And I did the same as I was told. I started the medicine at the very beginning when I took it. I opened an after breakfast package and found it contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. And doctor, the doctor of medical college recommended him to take the medicine with hot water. And when he opened the package after his breakfast, he found it contained a brown powder in the screw of paper. जो पुड़िया थी उस पुड़िया में उसको ब्राउन कलर के पाउडर्स मिलते हैं जो कि उसे गर्म पानी के साथ लेना होता है. It tasted just like cinnamon. You know, it is a wooden stick, दालचीनी जिसको कहते हैं. The contents of the and bedtime package were less. Let me erase the lines or words that I have written on the screen. Yeah. The content of the lunchtime and bedtime package were less obviously identifiable. The narrator could not identify the package of lunchtime and bedtime. He could not analyze and realize how to take these medicines and what is these medicines are. You know, both contain small, spherical, brown pellets. Both. I mean, the medicine that he had to take after lunchtime and bedtime, both were spherical brown pellets. You know, small spherical pellets, गोली जिसको कहते हैं. Sorry. They looked suspiciously like sheep dung. And medicines were looking like sheep dung, gobar. But of course I took them. But I had to take them, because if I don't take, I would not feel better. And I have to take, a pilgrimage to complete my Korah. That night, after my first full day's course, I slept very soundly like a log, not a dead man. And after taking the medicine for a day, that night I felt better. I could sleep loudly, very soundly, and like a log. Normally, I could sleep normally as usual, not a dead man. I was not afraid of death at that moment, because I felt better after taking those medicines for a day. And when I completed full day's course, I felt better and I could sleep. Now, what happens next? Let me scroll down the page. Once he saw that I was going to leave, Shaitan left me to return to Lhasa. When Shaitan, the car's driver, he felt that narrator is well and better, he left me to return to Lhasa. Shaitan was also going to Lhasa, where Daniel went. As a Buddhist, he told me he knew that it did not really matter if I passed away. He was a Buddhist person, and he told me that he would not worry, he has no problem if I pass away, if I would die. Shaitan, एक बौद्ध धर्म का फॉलोवर जिसको कहते हैं, उसने कहा कि अगर आप मर भी जाते तो फिर मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होती. But he thought it would be bad for business. But it was, bad for his business. He was a driver. और अगर ड्राइवर जिन यात्रियों को लिया हुआ है उनमें से किसी की मौत हो जाती है तो उसके व्यवसाय पर असर पड़ता है. बिकॉज he would not be able to collect rent. उसको भाड़ा नहीं मिलेगा. Darchen did not look so horrible after a good night's sleep. And now I began to feel better at Darchen. It was not looking so horrible for me after a good night's sleep. As I slept for whole night normally, I felt better next day in Darchen. It was still dusty, partially derelict and punctuated by heaps of rubble and refuse. And it was all still dusty. Everywhere we could see and find dust, partially derelict and punctuated by heaps of rubble and refuse. And a lot of garbages, useless things had been thrown at Darchen, but the sun shone brilliantly in a clear blue sky, and outlook across the plain to the south gave me a vision of the Himalayas, commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gurla Mandhata, with just a wisp of cloud suspended over its summit. Whereas the sun shone brilliantly in a clear blue sky, I could have the outlook across the plain to the south, and I was able to have a vision of the Himalayas. When the sun shone brilliantly, the narrator could see a vision of Himalayas, commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, and that mountain was kept or covered, occupied with snow. And he saw Gurla Mandhata. It is the name of that mountain. That this is part of Himalayas. And with just a wisp of clouds suspended over its summits. And he could see, something. Wisp means, lightweight or light something. Cloud suspended over its summit. And he could see wisp of cloud covered with snow over its summit. Top. Summit means top of that mountain was kept and covered with wisp of cloud. That's it. Keep learning.